Hey there, Back to the Future fans. To commemorate the day that Marty McFly came to the future this 2015, I decided to talk about time travel in a video. That's right, me, Draspee, talking about time travel for all your favorite movie. Just kidding, it's not everybody's favorite movie, but it's one of my top 10 at least. Anyway, so as you know, there are some things in Back to the Future that wouldn't work exactly, like time-space continuum, as Doc Brown is saying in this meme, and all that other stuff, but we'll explain how time travel works. So anyway, first thing you need to know is that time and space, in order to travel through time, you need to go together because everything's moving constantly. So for example, we have the red lines representing time, you need to go there, and also you need to go to a particular space from a particular space, as well as a certain time from a certain time. So that's how time travel works initially. Unfortunately, the DeLorean only shows two coordinates here, as shown in this display here, the time of origin and the time of arrival. But in reality, you would need 9 coordinates, starting with your point of origin, as shown here, and then, of course, you need 6 points to point your next point, which would be your point of arrival, so that's a total of 7 of the 9 coordinates you need, and then your course would be a total of 11.8 billion miles to do the first jump from 1985 to 1955. That's a long distance to travel at 88 miles per hour and instantaneous, and then in total, your time of arrival, time of origin, making up your next 9. How that would all work, I will explain later with how maybe the flux capacitor might do that, or with wormholes. I'll explain that in the upcoming bit. One way to account for the whole distance thing is the flux capacitor might actually carry the DeLorean along with it in the relative position in space. So as the Earth's moving along through time, so is the DeLorean going through time. As it's traveling through time, it's also traveling with the Earth through time. How that would work, I don't know. We'd have to ask Doc Brown. But that's one explanation for how to deal with the whole distance thing, because 88 miles per hour wouldn't cover. 88 miles per hour might cover a little distance that might be a slight variation in between where it started. That would be reasonable for 1985 technology, even 2015 technology. The other explanation is wormholes. Now, wormholes also shrink to absolute zero, which would also explain why the DeLorean is covered in complete ice, which according to the original script is always supposed to be. Absolute zero would explain this. Why Einstein wasn't killed, though, that's something it doesn't explain. Although, considering the immense heat created, it might actually just balance out inside the DeLorean, but why it doesn't explode either is another good question. We might just have to accept that Doc Brown is the boss, and that he just knows his stuff, and we're going to have to accept that because he's a scientist and we're not, at least most of us. Now, accepting Doc Brown's superiority in science and whatnot, we're going to go on to explain the confusing timeline thing where the time stream is altered a total of 8 different times by different people. It's a mess, but hey, let's go into it. So, to start off, Doc Brown makes a nefarious DeLorean, invites Marty McFly over for whatever reason. This is the beginning of it all. We don't know what happens. Send Einstein 1 minute in the future. Doesn't change anything because sending things to the future does not alter the timeline, only jumps backward changes the timeline. And the ripple effect is if you're in a timeline and it goes forward, and yeah, anyway. It requires plutonium to go forward, which causes Libyan nationalists to come, shoot Doc Brown. Doc Brown dies. Then Marty goes back, changing the future the first time. And now it's 1955, and Marty is messing up the future big time. He breaks up his parents, he destroys a pine tree, he's just wrecking everything, he's throwing out people's futures, throwing out Goldie, whatever his face is, he's ruining Brown's future by telling him he's going to get shot, he almost gets erased, but he fixes it more or less, and as we see later on, things didn't turn out too bad. He gets an improved family life, his mom stops drinking, his father's successful, and his siblings turn out a lot better, as we can see from their earlier pictures. But of course, as movies always go, and Back to the Future particularly, things aren't over. Marty has to again change the future this time by going to the future with Doc Brown. Just a quick note here, Doc has now altered the past again, so we're now on to the third change. Just keep that note here as we continue forward. Here comes, people, 2015. Yeah, when we're supposed to have hoverboards, dressed like hippies and crazy people, and yeah, it's not really like that. But anyway, go in the future, change the way his kids are, and, things are going great. Griff is sent to jail, everything's going good, Marty's kid's not sent to jail, but then Jennifer finds out that their future's horrible as a couple, and well, that's not too good now, is it? And on top of that, since they weren't guarding the time machine, Biff goes back, changes 1985, thus changing the timeline again, causing a ripple effect, so Biff doesn't exist anymore because he died as a mob boss. So then they go back again, changing it now to a 5th time. They go back, and things are horrible. Marty's houses, and yeah, he Biff's his father, and it's like, oh. But anyway, he goes back. They change things again. 6th time, Doc Brown goes back, struck by lightning. 7th time, leading to Back to the Future 3. Back to the Future 3, the 8th and final timeline when Marty goes back, because after that, all time travels are to the future, all time machines are destroyed. Why Doc Brown rebuilds the time train, we'll never know. But all we do know is because the time train was going back to the future each time, it did not change anything in the grand scheme of things, which is great. Although we still don't have hoverboards, so I'm really upset at that. But oh well. Please subscribe, leave a comment, and like. Have a nice day.